Welcome to Knowledgeable Aging. I'm your host, Jason Kotar. Joining us today to talk about what is your name again, 3 tips for remembering names is Rena Yudkowsky. Rena is a professional memory coach and geriatric social worker and founder of Memory Matters. She teaches online memory improvement courses to midlifers and seniors. Currently, she is the memory coach for an international anti-aging clinic where she does one-to-one coaching and is working on a comprehensive program to prevent dementia. She is super passionate about her mission of helping those 50 plus to age more healthfully, more both physically and cognitively, as she empowers them to believe in their own memory with confidence and grace. How are you doing today, Rena?
Hi, I'm great. Thank you so much for having me, Jason.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm looking forward to our conversation. So, Rena, let's get started. How did you get into the memory work?
Okay, so it started a long time ago. When I was a teenager, I went and hung out and volunteered in the nursing homes. So instead of going to camp, I went to the nursing home. And I discovered that I was extremely passionate about working with seniors. I would dance and sing and play bingo with them, and I'm talking about like 25 years ago. And after that, when I had to go for a degree, I'm like, okay, what am I gonna do with myself? I decided to go for a degree in geriatric social work. And my first job out of graduate school, I was the head of an Alzheimer's department of an assisted living facility. How I got that job, don't ask. It's crazy. I had no managerial experience 25 years ago. Anyway, and I loved it. I love working with, some people find it depressing. I found it amazing that I can make a difference in the lives of people with cognitive impairment. But it led me to think about like, why does memory work and why does it not work? Like, what's broken here? Of course, fast forward 25 years, there's a lot of research. We understand a lot more about dementia and the brain and brain health and brain fitness. It's a very big field in the neurology departments. We understand a lot more about dementia today, although not totally. We don't know everything yet. And unfortunately,
Right.
there's no cure yet. But I keep saying, I hope in my lifetime there will be. So I was really, really interested in memory. I took a course actually in Hebrew. I live in Israel, and I took a course in Hebrew about memory. And it made me really excited about it. It's like, wow, if we could teach people how to remember better and we could empower people to age more healthfully because they have the tools and techniques, that would be amazing. So I did a lot of research. I read, I watched the webinars and put together a lot of stuff. And I created my own course in English. And I put in stuff that I felt was really fun and interesting and compelling to learn and understand. My course is very practical. So that's how I got into it. Like basically from working with dementia as a geriatric social worker, I now call myself also a memory coach. So it's all part of that, helping people age healthfully, cognitively. Like there's so much that people could do to age healthfully. And that's the exciting part. You know, people don't have to just say, I'm too old for this. No, you're not too old to remember names. You're not too old to learn to remember and to preserve your memory and to stay sharp. So that's the fun part, and that's how I got into it.
Yeah. Can we start with aging and memory? Why does memory loss happen as we age?
Okay, that's a good question. And there are a lot of factors. There are a lot of factors. So first of all, as our brain ages, we do start to lose brain cells. Brain cells die. But the good news that we know now from all the research is that there's something called neurogenesis, right? Neurogenesis means you can create new brain cells. You can make new cells. So it's not just your brain cells die and that's it, you're old and you can't think straight anymore. No, through lifestyle factors like exercise and diet and staying socially active and cognitively fit, through doing a lot of good things, we can create new brain cells. So that's the exciting part of this. So there is a oxidative process that happens in the brain. Think rust on a bike. When we talk about oxidation on the brain, think rust on a bike, and that wears down our brain. Now, why does oxidation happen? Lots of reasons. Toxins, environment, lifestyle. We eat a lot of garbage, right? The standard American diet includes a lot of sugar and processed foods. It wears down our brain. Toxins, chemicals, drugs, lots of reasons. So when you hear about antioxidants, right? You hear about foods that have antioxidants in them. That's what it's doing. It's fighting the oxidative process that's ruining your brain. So, and then there's also, again, there's a big emphasis today on lifestyle factors. So you don't sleep well and you take drugs that cause depression and anxiety, or you just have depression and anxiety, and you eat garbage and you don't move, all those things are going to create a brain sickness or disease rather than wellness. So yes, there's a genetic piece. People always want to know about the genetic piece. There is a genetic piece to almost all diseases, including the dementias. But the lifestyle factors are much stronger and more powerful. That's what we've come to understand today.
Yeah. So obviously the title of this webinar, Rena, we're talking about remembering names.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it so difficult, or why do people have such an issue remembering names?
Okay, so this is such a hot topic. Most people come to a memory course to learn to remember names. So why is it so hard? You know why? Because I say my name, Rena Yudkowsky. I said it real fast, you didn't hear it, and it has no meaning to you.
Right.
Something that has no meaning to you, it's hard to remember, and you're not motivated to remember it. But if I would say my name really clearly and slowly, Rena Yudkowsky, and I would give it meaning, like I'm going to do now. Rena is Hebrew and it means joy. Rena means joy. So I do this little, Rena's jumping for joy. So if you're listening, you're not going to see this, but if you're watching the video, you're like, I'm jumping for joy.
Nice.
Now Rena means something to you. So 2 minutes ago, Jason, you didn't know what Rena meant. Now you know that Rena means jumping for joy. Well, it means joy. And I put a movement to it. So I put an image to it, which is another way to remember things. So it's hard to remember names because, first of all, it's something that you have to recall without a visual cue. When you see my face, people always say, oh, I can remember faces, but I can't remember names, because our mind thinks in pictures. So my face is a picture. You can remember my face, but my name is not an image. It's not a picture, so it's harder to remember. And it didn't mean anything to you. Now that it means something to you, it's going to be much easier to remember. In addition to that, the motivation piece. You know, if you walk into a room with 20 new people, how motivated are you to remember their names? Well, I would be very motivated because I'm a social worker. I like people, and it's very important to me to remember names. But some people say, it doesn't matter. I don't need to remember people's names. Okay, so they're not motivated. But if I put $10,000 on the table and said, if you remember those 20 people's names, you'll get $10,000, you'd be quite motivated, right?
Yeah.
So it's a matter of motivation and also believing that you can do it. As people get older, they say, well, even young people say this to me, I'm really bad at names. Now, I don't let anyone get away with that anymore. Don't say that to me. You are not really bad at names. That is the script that's running through your brain. So if you say that, then if you all day you're saying, I'm really bad at names, I'm really bad at names, then how likely are you to remember the name of the next person you meet? Not very likely. Yeah. But if you have a different script running through, then you have a much higher chance. If the script is, I got this, I have a tool, I have a technique, I'm just going to try this cute little technique and it's going to work and I'm going to get your name, that's very different.
Yeah, one of the things, and that's great, one of the things I love about the work that you do and following you on social media is something you just posted about how it takes effort and attention. Everything takes effort and attention. And so when you're talking to somebody for the first time, you have to give that effort and attention to be able to actually start to listen to and understand and to remember that name.
Exactly. We assume that I meet you, you say your name, and I got it. Like it's in there, it's encoded properly. But no. And especially if I was on my phone or looking around or talking to someone else, everything takes attention and focus, like you just said. Because if I'm not present, if I'm not looking at you and looking at your face when you say your name, I have a very small chance of remembering it. But if I'm really present, if I can block out any distractions, so I'm not on my phone, I'm not watching anyone, I'm not distracted, I'm present with you, I'm listening to you. By the way, I also put in that post that the word listen and silent are the same letters. L-I-S-T-E-N and silent, S-I-L-E-N-T, are the same letters, just reversed. So when you are listening to someone and you are silent and you really, really hear their name and you really pay attention, and then you have 6 seconds to do something with that name before it's lost. And that's what I go into with the techniques. If you want me to talk about them, I can.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll talk about that in a second. But no, yeah. I'd say you stole my thunder. I love that piece about listen and silent.
Yeah.
why is it so important to remember names for business?
Okay, so this is a great question because if you look on LinkedIn, there have been many posts about people saying, I lost a sale because I couldn't remember a client's name.
Mm,
Or a client called me and I didn't know who he was and I couldn't even reference him, or I know what he was talking about because I didn't remember talking to him. Or people say, um, I couldn't remember I couldn't remember the customer's name or the client's name, or I was supposed to get back to someone and I forgot to. That's where memory can cost you a sale. It can cost you a business, right? So remembering people's name is the #1 business networking skill. So when you go to a networking event, for example, and you meet new people, if you can remember their names, they're going to want to work with you because why? Our names are our sweetest sound to us. It's our identity. My name is my identity. It's who I am, right? And it's important to me. And when you care enough to remember my name and call me by my name, you're showing me that you care about me. You're showing me that my name is important to you and my name is important to me. So if it's important to you, we have a relationship, right? So it's our sweetest sound, it's our identity. We love hearing people call us by our names, and people are impressed. They're impressed that you care enough to remember their name.
mm,
And I'm actually tell you the truth, like I'll give you an example. Teachers, when my kids come home from school and after a couple days at school, the teacher doesn't know their name. Now I know they have big classes, so I'm trying to be forgiving, but being in the business that I am, I get a little disappointed if after, okay, let's give it more than a couple days. Let's give it a week of school. If the teacher doesn't know the girls' names after a week of school, I'm like, no, you need to know their names. And the same thing in business. The same thing in business. You need to know your customers and clients' names. Now, we're not perfect, and no
no,
one expects perfection, and we don't expect each other to know everyone's names all the time. But it's a matter of caring and trying and just applying the techniques so you can remember people's names.
excellent. Well, let's get into it. Let's talk about the 3 tips
Yeah.
that you can give us for remembering names.
Okay. So yeah, here we go. #1, as I mentioned quickly before, make sure you hear the name. You cannot remember something you didn't hear. If I mumble my name is Rara. You didn't hear that, you can't remember it. You got to hear the name. So if someone said their name quickly and you didn't catch it, you must ask them to repeat it. Even 2 or 3 times if they have a hard name, make sure you ask them to repeat it so you hear it. So the first thing is you got to hear it. And then you want to comment on it. You want to show that you care. Comment on the name. Oh, that's a pretty name. That's a different name. What does that mean? I never heard that name. Or if it's a very typical name, you say, oh, my sister's name is that, or I have an aunt with that name. That's a beautiful name. Or you remind me of my aunt, sister, brother, brother-in-law, whatever. So you're commenting on the name. And if it's a name that you wonder how they spell it, say, oh, Yudkowsky, do you spell that with a K or a C? So comment on the name. What are you doing? What does that do? You're paying attention. You're giving it a couple seconds of attention, which we take for granted. We take for granted that we need to pay attention to something in order to make it stick, to encode it properly. You keep using the word encode. Encode means to get it from
Yep.
short-term memory to long-term memory, where you can then recall it when you want it. If you encode it properly in the first place, it's there when you want it. So you're going to comment on the name, and by doing this, you're focusing on it. So when I said you have 6 seconds to do something with that name, you're hearing it, you're giving it attention by commenting on it, asking how to spell it, asking, something about the name, if they're related to someone. And then you're going to repeat it back to them a couple times in that conversation. Because why does this help? It helps because you're hearing yourself say the name, besides repeating it, which of course helps us encode it. You're hearing yourself say it. When you hear yourself say something, you're using your senses. The more senses you use to encode the memory, the better it's encoded, the easier it is to recall. So it would be like this. Hi, Jason. Jason, where are you from?
Bonita Springs, Florida.
Okay. And Jason, how long have you been living there?
1 year.
Oh, amazing. Do you have family there, Jason?
I do. My mom and my dad.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's so nice that you're close to your family, Jason. Now, I just said it 5 times. That might have sounded exaggerated, but I was trying to get across the point. I just said his name 5 times. I have a much better chance of remembering his name, Jason's name, your name, because I said it so many times right then and there. So you might have a longer conversation with someone and you can spread it out, obviously, but make sure you use the name because you're hearing yourself say it, and those senses help it encode it into your brain better. And then when you walk away from the person, when you're finished meeting the person or finished with the conversation, you say, it was so nice to meet you, Jason. Goodbye. Have a good day, Jason. And you make sure you use it at the end. What is it doing? It's getting it encoded better, deeper into your brain. Now you can do this as well on the phone, even if it's not a live meeting and you're talking to someone on the phone, whether it's a client, a customer, or a friend, or someone new that you're meeting, you can do the same thing on the phone. It works. Obviously, when you meet someone in person, it's much easier to remember them because you have a face to put to the name. And so those 3 tips are the beginning part of the technique. Then after that, I go into a longer technique, which is not hard, it's simple, just takes practice, which has to do with association. So it's taking that name, making it meaningful, associating it to something on the face. When you get the face and the name connected, wow, it's so much easier to remember because it's associated as one thing now instead of 2 pieces of information. Now you got it together. But how we do that takes a little longer, and I teach that in my master class, and it's really fun. And it's not hard. You just have to practice it like every other technique that you want to improve something in your life. You got to practice it.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about when you're finished talking to that individual, whether it's in person or on the phone. Is there a technique for when you go home as far as writing it down, or what do you encourage people to do once they finish having that conversation? I remember back in the days, the old school networking thing is when you get a business card and you heard something interesting. Maybe he's from Pittsburgh and you're from Pittsburgh, right? You write on the back says from Pittsburgh. And so now you have something to connect with them. Is there anything that you would recommend for when you leave that individual, what the next steps are to make sure that that stays encoded in your brain?
Yes. So one idea is to write it down, and that could work. You walk away, you take out your pen and paper, and you write Jason Kotar, and you could even write something about Jason or something that is memorable about him or how you connected the name to the face based on the technique we teach. If you write it down, again, you're using another sense. So you have a much better chance of remembering it. You could do that. You could also just repeat it a few times. So I might walk away from meeting you, and I would just, in my, even out loud, I would say, Jason Kotar, Jason Kotar, Jason Kotar. And I might even say, you're from, right, here, and you do this, KA. You're wearing a t-shirt that says KA. So, and you have KA in your name, Kotar. You have a K, and in the middle you have an A. So KA is going to be, I'm going to just associate KA and your name, Kotar. And that's going to help me. Now, there is a longer technique I would do to make it more substantial,
Yeah.
but right there, and another fun thing is you can make yourself memorable to other people. So you want other people to remember your name, right? Besides you wanting to remember their name, you want to make yourself memorable, especially if you had a networking event for business. So you might introduce yourself with something interesting, crazy, funny, absurd, because that's what we remember, right? So again, the way I do my name, I did my first name before, Yudkowsky. I actually have a picture of my family dressed up as cows. It's a great picture. After seeing my kids dressed up as cows, you can't forget my name. But Yudkowsky, I might say, again, if I'm not doing the whole technique, I just want you to remember, I want to make myself memorable. I'll say, Rena Yudkowsky, we love cows. We love milk in our family. Yudkowsky, just think of a cow. Now then people say, oh, but then people are going to call you Mrs. Cow or Mrs. Milk. So that's where we take each syllable of the name and we really make it stick and we make it memorable with pictures and associations. But that's the short version. So you make yourself memorable to other people, or you do this, when I meet you and I just did KA and Kotar, I just made you memorable in my mind so that I can remember you.
Yeah, that's good. I didn't think about that. I want to talk about multitasking. I don't want to get into multitasking too much. What I want to talk about is memory and remembering names. What does multitasking do to your brain?
Okay, so this is one of my favorite topics to talk about. I have a whole webinar on this. But
in
short, multitasking trips up your brain. Now, we all think we're so talented that we could do so many things at once, right? Wrong. It actually makes you less creative when you multitask. It makes you more stressed. It makes you feel like you're all over the place, right? You know that feeling like, oh my gosh, I got to do this and this and this and this, and you try to do it all at once, and you just feel so stressed. It also temporarily lowers your IQ by 15 points. Temporarily lowers your IQ by 15 points. It's also very dangerous. For those of you that are still trying to drive and talk on the phone, I really hope not too many people are still doing that, except that we are, because we're trying to get so much done. Really, really dangerous. And that's the reason that in most places there's a very hefty fine for doing it, because your brain cannot multitask. It cannot talk on the phone, have a whole conversation with someone who's virtual, and drive a car. Now you think you can, but God forbid, if it comes to stepping on those brakes and avoiding a crash, you are much slower to step on those brakes if you are talking on the phone. So multitasking is dangerous, and it makes us stressed, less creative, and we really, our brains don't work like that. We really can't do two things at the same millisecond. We could do things fast, like one after another, where our brains are sequential processors, where we take information and we process it in a sequence. But we really don't multitask. It's a myth. And they're finding that the more we're able to slow down and be present, we're calmer, and we can absorb information and therefore remember it better. Our memories will work better if we absorb and process the information more present and more calmly and more mindfully.
Yeah, and so I think that one of the wonderful takeaways there, when you're talking about multitasking and meeting somebody, let's just say at a networking group, like you said, I remember doing some wonderful reading on what you do, and you talked about listen carefully with full attention, eye contact, and with your whole brain. So you can't multitask where you're looking around the room and trying to do different things. It's about really being present, and I love that.
Yeah, and when we do, but we do that, right? We look at everything going on, but then I'm going to say to you, I can't remember your name. It's not that I can't remember your name. I didn't even pay attention to it when you said it.
Right.
But if I really pay attention, I'm really focused on you, making that eye contact, really trying to get rid of distractions, I have a much better chance of remembering it. Now, I will say there are times in our lives where we can't single task, right? There are times that our kids need us, or our spouses need us, or a lot of people need us at once, and it's very hard to just single task. But what I tell people is, as much as possible, to stop multitasking. You will find your memory and focus improved if you can stop multitasking as much as possible.
Yeah. So I know you do a lot of courses, you do a master classes when it comes to memory. You're one of the leaders in this field. When it comes to remembering names, how long should, like you said, somebody should be practicing? This is not something you just do once and you master it. How long should somebody continue to really just learn techniques and tips when it comes to this? Because like you said, it's going to benefit you in the long run, whether it's personal or business.
Okay, so I see this as constant learning, right? Just like whatever you want to master, you got to keep practicing. So
Okay.
you learn the technique for names, and then every time you meet new people, you use it, you try it, and then you get better and better at it. So even when I teach the techniques, people are like, oh, that sounds tedious. I'm like, no, the more you practice it, the easier it gets. It's not tedious. You just have to learn it and practice it, and then you get good at it. So it's hard to say, it depends. It's hard to say how long it takes. You learn a technique, you practice it, you use it, it works, you get good at it. You know, they're not hard techniques. It's just a matter of practicing. It's not like a matter of how many minutes or hours you need it. You just keep using it once you have the technique.
Yeah. What do you say to those individuals that just kind of say, hey, I have a weak memory. I just can't do this.
Okay, so Jason, what do you say to the people that say, I have a weak bicep muscle, I just can't lift something heavy?
Oh, you gotta.
You say work it, right? You say lift some weights. If you lift some weights, your biceps will get stronger. If your stomach muscles are weak, you got to do core exercises, right? Same thing with your brain and your memory. It's use it or lose it. So if you tell me your memory's weak for whatever reason, and there are people that have really good, excuses, quote unquote. There are people with traumatic brain injuries. There are people with infections. There are people with chemo brain, COVID brain. There's all sorts of reasons that your brain. But really, I think what you were referring to is just people that say, oh, I have a bad memory. Yeah. It's because they don't use it properly. They don't exercise it. So the more you exercise it, stimulate it, challenge it, the stronger it gets.
So Rena, I know you have a lot of courses on memory, master classes. Why those with dementia, and why are you putting together a course about preventing dementia?
Okay, great question. So 25 years ago, when I got into this field, we didn't talk about preventing dementia, right? There was no preventing dementia then. There was trying to help people with dementia have a better quality of life, which we still do, obviously. But today, there is an emphasis on preventing dementia because we have learned through research that there are risk factors for every disease. And if you can lower the risk factors for dementia, then you're lowering your chances of getting dementia. So then we can ultimately prevent it. And because we said that there's a genetic piece, right? People are very, very scared. If someone's caring for a parent or grandparent with dementia, they're really afraid of getting dementia. They really don't want to age like that. They want to do something differently. So the emphasis here on preventing dementia is very strong. In fact, I've heard a neurologist say that 90% of the cases are preventable. 90% of the dementia cases are preventable. That is unbelievable. So the question is, so what can we do to prevent dementia? And the answer is back to those lifestyle factors. Living a life that is conducive to health, to brain health. And we do that through many things. There's some really interesting research done on the blue zones. Have you heard of the blue zones?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the research on the blue zones, they went and studied people that were living to over 100 without disease. And they were like, what are these people doing right? Yeah. And they came up with some interesting conclusions. And based on those conclusions, we're really trying to put together a way to help people really age more healthfully. So some of the conclusions were stay socially active. If you socially isolate, which unfortunately is what happened the last couple of years with COVID, and it's no one's fault, but me and all the people in the field are seeing the effects of social isolation on elderly. I am seeing so much cognitive decline because of it. I mean, it's because of a lot of things, but for sure the social isolation is a big piece. So staying socially active is going to keep your brain sharper. Exercising, when you exercise physically, it creates new brain cells. It creates BDNF, which is the brain's growth factor. When you eat healthy, you're giving your brain the nutrients it needs. When you breathe deeply, when you get into the yoga, the meditation, there's so much good research on this that it's good for our brain because our brain needs oxygen, right? We're opening and stimulating our brain with oxygen. There's a lot of other research, interesting research going on, but the components are social stimulation, physical stimulation, healthy eating, and cognitive stimulation, which is the piece I do, the cognitive training, the cognitive stimulation, keeping your minds really active, strong, sharp. Learn something new every day.
Mm-hmm.
Don't just watch TV all day. Learn something new. Learn something. If you've always wanted to learn a new instrument or new language, now's the time because that is so stimulating for the brain. Use it or lose it. So these are the factors. And obviously it's not so simple because there's a lot of factors that go into our health. There's other physical pieces and other physical diseases, and there's mental health stuff. There's mobility. There's so many factors, hormones, so many factors that affect our brain. But the point is that if we can live a healthier lifestyle, brain healthy lifestyle, and combined with the tools and techniques that I teach to help our memory really, really be strong, then we have a much prettier picture. Now, I can't guarantee anyone anything. Right? I can't guarantee anyone that they won't get dementia, but we're going to take the research and we're going to really try to motivate and encourage people to live a healthier brain lifestyle.
Yeah. One last question on dementia. Do we know, can dementia be reversed?
So again, that's something that years ago we said no way, and today there are doctors that are saying yes. Dr. Dale Bredesen, his book is called The End to Alzheimer's. The Dr. Shirzai, there are a couple, the neurologists, Dr. Dean and Ayesha Shirzai, and all these neurologists are doing a lot of amazing work at reversing dementia. But again, it's not like, oh, take this pill and you'll be fine. Unfortunately, there's no miracle pills yet. There's no one thing. It's a lot of factors that they're coming up with, many factors that are helping. But if we can get people, to understand that, and even younger people, like in our 40s and 50s, if we can get healthy in our 40s and 50s, wow, in our 60s and 70s, we're going to be really in good shape. But it's never too late. I always want to say, even if someone's older and they did not lead a healthy lifestyle, it's never too late to exercise. It's never too late to eat healthy. It's never too late to be healthier.
Excellent. Well, Rena, thank you so much. How can people find you?
Okay, thank you. So I have a website. It's renayudkowsky.com. So RENAYUDKOWSKY.com. And on there, you'll find a lot of my different programs, classes, courses. I have monthly programs, I have memberships. Feel free to check it out and be in touch with me. Email me with any questions, rena@renayudkowsky.com. I have a free Facebook group that I would love for you to join. I post almost every day in there, and you can get a lot of free information about memory in my Facebook group. And the other thing on the screen here is You Name It Masterclass. That is, I took the best part out of my course and made a masterclass. So if any of you are they only want to learn the techniques for names, I got you covered. So check all this out on my website. I'd be happy to be in touch with you.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Rena. As far as Knowledgeable Aging, you can go to knowledgeableaging.com. You can see all of our upcoming and archive webinars. You can go to our YouTube page. We encourage you to subscribe. We update that as much as possible every month. If podcasts are your thing, you can find us on Apple Tunes, Spotify, etc. Till next time, I'm your host, Jason Kotar, and this is Knowledgeable Aging.